समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
आप समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
IndiGo's top leadership, breaking its silence, is now claiming that allegations that it engineered the crisis in which its operations came to a grinding halt are simply untrue. The chairman of IndiGo has also denied that the airline tried to influence government policy when it came to mandatory rest time for pilots, a global safety standard that was met by all other airlines in India except IndiGo. The main question remains unanswered. Why then did IndiGo not hire the extra pilots? Some say just 65 to 100 more pilots could have averted the crisis. Why is a company that earns thousands of crores in profit trying to avert such a simple fix to this problem? And will the government act to break IndiGo's monopoly? In a moment from now, we'll be talking to senior journalist Sucheta Dalal, one of the country's foremost investigative reporters. I'm Barkhatat. You're with the Mojo story. This image of the IndiGo CEO seemingly folding his hands either in namaste or apology as he met with the aviation minister is now viral. There are more meetings of the CEO, more appearances before the aviation regulator, the DGCA. But the regulator itself has failed, and heads have not rolled. The questions are only multiplying. Why did IndiGo not hire more pilots to meet the globally required safety standard norms that stipulate a certain rest period for pilots? This is, to be clear, a safety requirement. And in a year when the country has been scarred by the crash of an airplane, we should be especially careful of meeting such global safety norms. More importantly, every other airline in India was able to meet this particular requirement except IndiGo. This is despite the fact that IndiGo has a near monopoly over the domestic market and is extremely profitable as a company. Did IndiGo engineer the crisis? Did IndiGo try and pressure the government? Is the aviation regulator in collusion with IndiGo, as has been alleged by several aviation experts? The chairman of IndiGo, Vikram Mehta, denied that in a statement that finally broke the silence of the top leadership. But there's a lot that the airline still has to answer. And there are also many questions about the role of the regulator and whether the government should do more and will do more to fix what the country just saw unfold in the last fortnight. Let me introduce our guest today. Our newsmaker is Sucheta Dalal. She's the managing editor of Money Life. She's one of the country's foremost journalists, a key investigative journalist whose work continues to shine a light on all the dark spaces that people who are powerful don't want uncovered. Sucheta, thank you so much. I want to start respond by playing out an excerpt of Vikram Mehta's statement. This statement came in the last few hours. It came after many days of silence by the IndiGo leadership, and it denied allegations that IndiGo had tried to influence government policy. Take a look.
However, there are some allegations that are untrue. That IndiGo engineered the crisis, that we tried to influence government rules, that we compromised, that the board was not involved. These claims are incorrect. IndiGo has followed the pilot fatigue rules as they came into effect. We operated under the new rules throughout, both in July and in November. We did not attempt to bypass them, nor did we do anything that negatively impacted our unblemished track record of safety. The disruptions of last week did not happen because of any deliberate action. They happened because a combination of internal and unanticipated external events, including minor technical glitches, schedule changes linked to the start of the winter, adverse weather conditions, increased congestion in the aviation system, and implementation of and operation under the updated crew rostering rules.
Sucheta, the point is that if indeed IndiGo did crisis or influence the government, there is still no answer as to why it did not hire clearly the extra pilots that they needed to meet these safety norms. Some estimates suggest that all they needed were somewhere between 65 to 100 more pilots. This is a company with thousands of crores in profit. Other aviation companies that are not profitable met these safety standard norms. IndiGo did not. When you heard Vikram Mehta's statement, and it's important to note that the promoter of IndiGo has still not spoken. Vikram Mehta is chairman. He represents the board. He's not the owner of the airline. The owner of the airline has still not spoken. Did you find it a convincing response? What did you think when you heard him?
So it's not convincing at all, for the first reason that, okay, maybe it's semantics. They did not engineer the failure because they probably didn't expect it. You know, when you have a 65% market share, you probably believe that just the threat that from day, December 3, from a particular day, you're going to have a crisis should be enough for DGCA to roll back the norms. So maybe they're just playing with words by saying we did not engineer it. We actually expected the Civil Aviation Ministry and DGCA to be more worried about passengers and roll back the rules, because the fact is that they were not compliant. And, he's not saying that you guys are all lying, DGCA is lying, Ministry of Civil Aviation is lying, the pilots are lying. The pilots have put out a statement saying that they were ready to fly. There's one pilot who's even made an in-flight announcement about it. So if all of them say that they were ready to fly and he says that we were compliant, is he saying that? He's not saying it. So there are only two ways here. It's black or white. Were you compliant when there was a non-negotiable deadline? You were not. So if you were not compliant, there are bound to be consequences. And one of the consequences is that your planes can't be a rostering issue and you can't fly as many planes as you thought you would. So this is a pack of lies. Okay. And I'm really surprised that the chairman of the board has taken it upon himself to come and face the public. Because like you said, Rahul Bhatia is the managing director. He's not only designated promoter and founder, but he's also managing director actively. It doesn't matter that he may or may not take a salary with a 65% market share and the kind of shareholding he has. It doesn't matter. But he has never been called. And I find it highly curious that, with all this fire that the DGCA is breathing, you haven't felt promoter as yet. You haven't felt the need to question him. He's not making a statement. You're putting out a CEO in the public and now the chairman. I mean, I think it's all very, very non-convincing. The only thing that stands out here is them repeatedly saying, we apologize, we apologize, we apologize. But the apology doesn't even cover the costs of the trauma or the real costs of losses that people have suffered. It's not about a ticket, right?
Yeah. The latest is that they're offering 10,000 rupee vouchers to those quote unquote severely impacted. That's going to be another maze of, navigation. Everybody will feel that they were severely impacted, and who is going to be the arbiter of who was severely impacted more than others. Let's explore this a little bit further. If you believe that it's very peculiar that the promoter has not made a single statement in public, not a single statement that we know of to his employees, he hasn't been summoned by the DGCA, by the aviation ministry, why do you think that is?
So before we do that, let's look at the background of IndiGo. Okay, IndiGo was started by two people. One was Rahul Bhatia and the other is Mr. Gangwal. Gangwal is the one who had the aviation experience. You had a 49-page letter by him. He said governance in IndiGo is like a pan ki dukan. Okay. Now, he has been virtually ousted from the board. So you got this whole drama playing in the background, which tells you who's calling the shots in IndiGo, who's powerful, and who's powerful is not the board. who's powerful is the promoter. And he's so powerful that he's been able to sideline and remove a co-promoter with global aviation experience, which was Mr. Gangwal, right? So it is in this background that we are saying that you have not just invested in the company, you are hands-on, you are dictating its governance standards, you are dictating how it runs, and you have to come forward and face the music. And you were nowhere on the scene, not a single quote, nothing, nobody. What is stunning is that the government and the DGCA is not questioning him.
Absolutely, and there's no clear answer as to why. Why has Mr. Rahul Bhatia, who's the promoter of the airline, not even made a single public appearance, not even a pre-recorded little video, that has been released to the public? Now, let's get down to what do you think has happened here, right? Indigo is clearly driven by profit margins. It tom-toms its profit. No problem with that. Profit is not a bad word for any well-run company, provided it doesn't mess in aviation with safety standards and with corporate governance. Here, though nobody has said this to us, the surmise seems to be that Indigo wanted to save money, and that is why it was not hiring a few extra pilots. That would have, frankly, been small change in terms of Indigo's large access and deep pockets so what do you think it's only that Indigo was trying to basically be stingy? What's happened here?
So, Barkat, to the first question, the fact that no one talks about Rahul Bhatia, I think that just tells you in one sentence, which is not being said, the kind of power he still wields. Okay, it talks about his political influence, because in this country, it is impossible that they would not name him, call him, talk to him, demand answers. It reeks of political influence. So let's put that aside and say Indigo is very powerful today. At different times, different people have been powerful. At one time, Kingfisher had close clout with the Ministry of Civil Aviation. At one time, Jet was very close to the Ministry of Civil Aviation. Today, it is Indigo that is very close. And this is the reason why India's the whole aviation sector is such a mess, okay, that the civil aviation ministry seems to be in bed with whoever is most powerful at a particular given point of time. Now, if you look at this issue of costs, it really seems laughable that they should not spend on pilots, but there's an attitude in this whole company. I mean, anyone who flies Indigo, and I think you have occasionally tweeted about it too, that they want to extract value out of everything, right? So whatever little they can charge you extra on your baggage or whatever, they want to extract that money. So it's part of that, isn't it? Is anyone who's a passenger of Indigo surprised that they're trying to save money on pilots? Actually, I'm not, because it's exactly how that company is run, that every bit of cost saving probably adds to maybe the bonuses of senior management. I don't know how it works, but it seems in line. It seems very foolish now. And it's all seems foolish in retrospect, because I think an unexpected event happened. The ministry didn't cave in before the problem. And maybe the ministry and DGCA did not realize how much of a chaos they would unleash, because like I have written, third time, damn it. I mean, you didn't learn a lesson when Indigo played these games. You didn't learn a lesson when Jet Airways played its game. How many times will you fool around with passengers? And one of the reasons you get away, they didn't expect this level of chaos, which just shows that they don't think enough about the people who travel, the paying customers, and they know that we as customers do not have recourse to class action.
Is the problem
about class action? If you
I'll come to that. But one of the reasons that Indigo is able to wield this kind of influence, whether it sets out to do it or not consciously, is its hold over the domestic market. So 63 to 65% is almost a monopolistic hold over the market. And basically, if you look at the government response, I asked in the initial days, why didn't the regulator just ground Indigo? Why did the government roll back safety norms? But I suppose when any government sees the scenes of chaos, people not getting to funerals, a woman standing with a coffin of her dead husband, children not being able to reach for exams, possibly no government can afford that chaos to continue. So the moment the monopoly was allowed to build over the years, Indigo got its power from that. Now 10% of the routes have been cut, but we don't know if this will stay. Do you think the monopoly is the problem, or do you think the problem is something else?
No, the monopoly is the problem. The problem is your civil aviation policies, which do not allow industrialists with deep pockets to come in. And even after they have come in, there is enough today on the internet by people, including internal whistleblowers writing, that IndiGo also ensured that it suppressed anyone from growing. So Tata's have inherited Air India. The government messed it up. They're trying to set it right. So that's small today. It has shrunk. There is no other airline. We don't have decent bankruptcy norms. So you have ridiculous aviation policies where 50%, 45 to 50% of your costs are aviation turbine fuel, airport charges, and what have you. Even since 2011-12, when Kingfisher first happened, where the government instead was pushing banks to lend more, every time an airline has collapsed, it's public sector banks that are left holding the baby. They lost thousands of crores in Kingfisher. They've lost thousands of crores in Jet Airways. Go Airway just stopped in 2023. 6,000 crore plus other losses, even after, their wet lease aircrafts have gone away. So you have to fix your civil aviation so that industrialists with deep pockets can run a viable. Otherwise, whoever is a big player, they influence the government, they become powerful, and every ministry is guilty of kowtowing with whoever is the flavor of that time, whether it is taking free rides on Kingfisher, doing the same with Jet Airways, and I'm sure exactly the same is happening with IndiGo.
So that brings us to the role. IndiGo has clearly displayed, especially in its early responses, impunity, assumed invincibility. I think you said this, that they thought they were too big to fail. Those are your words. But let's come to the role of the regulator and the government, right? A parliamentary panel warned that this is a crisis in the making. The regulator did nothing. There is a viral letter written by whistleblowers within IndiGo anonymously that's available for everybody to see, that has very, very detailed almost sort of elaborations of why this was a crisis waiting to happen, how IndiGo's management knew it would happen, and they just thought they could brazen their way through it. The regulator, let's start there, and the aviation ministry, it's all very well for the CEO sacked if it comes to that. But why didn't the government act before? Why didn't the regulator act before? There are all kinds of questions about the role of the regulator, many of them pointing to a possible collusion. How do you see the role of the regulator?
See, in simple words, it's called regulatory capture. Okay, it's known all over the world. The minute one entity is very large and almost a monopoly, and here with 65%, when the number two is 13 or 14%, it is literally a monopoly. And they call the shots. They decide what's happening. They decide on policy. In fact, they've got these pilot safety rules postponed since 2019 several times, and everyone knows it's primarily IndiGo. And if anybody else thought they could have got away with it, they also would have delayed hiring pilots because they have less money, right? So the fact that IndiGo did not hire, it just tells you they were so confident about the ministry. I think this is something that went horribly wrong because somebody in DGCA and Ministry of Civil Aviation either was sleeping or got worried at the last moment that, they probably thought they would trigger a bit of a crisis and stop, not realizing how big it would be in such a short time. And this just shows that they have no understanding really of aviation. There have to be heads that are rolled. It is really ironical that every scam or a banking scam or an aviation problem, the same regulators who sleep on their job suddenly become the investigators. They're sitting there with an 8-person team. You are responsible. What are you supervising today?
I was just going to ask you that, that this announcement that an 8-member regulator team from DGCA will be embedded in the IndiGo offices. But the point is the regulator itself should see the axe falling on people who allowed this to happen. So, it doesn't create any optimism that there is actually going to be a transparent root cause analysis or sort of punitive action for those responsible for this.
These are just sound bites. Our parliament is busy discussing Vande Mataram instead of discussing this, because they really don't care about the people. And Barkha, you know what happened after COVID, okay? Who really cares about people like us? So you suffer, you're at the airport, you have no choice. Can you say, I will not travel Indigo? If you're going to a destination where there is only Indigo, you will bloody well take that flight because you have no choice. And I think the government knows it. So they're posturing today. They're pretending they're going to do things. If they are serious, you will see a change first in civil aviation policy. B, you will see even some investigation into who in DGCA was sleeping on their job and a few heads being rolled over there, because that will show serious intent. Otherwise, it really means that you're just posturing. After 4 or 5 days, don't forget, Indigo is a big advertiser. So the news will get off the front page and it will be forgotten. Then they will drag the investigation as usual. This is our usual modus operandi. And then things will continue as usual until the next crisis.
You said heads should roll, and if the government is at all serious about a transparent investigation, there must be visible punitive action, including within the regulator. Where does the buck stop? Does it stop with the minister? Does it stop with the Secretary of Aviation? Does it stop with the head of the regulator? And of course, the airline. I mean, at the moment, there seems to be no punitive action against anybody. There is a kind of committee per committee approach. The DGCA, which was asleep at the wheel, is now going to be investigating Indigo and therefore not investigating itself. So if you had to assess where the buck stops, where would it be?
See, I would say it would be the regulator, because the regulator is supposed to keep the ministry informed. Okay. So let's just give them a little rope and say maybe ministry didn't know. But the DGCA has no excuse, frankly. They should have known. And that March 2025 letter, which is being talked about by the whistleblowers, that Indigo knew. I'm sure DGCA knew as well. And DGCA definitely knew on 3rd December that this is heading for a crisis. They probably thought it won't be so bad. They probably couldn't visualize how bad the cascading effect would be, because when one flight doesn't reach one destination, it affects 4 or 5 others down the road. They probably did not expect it. That just shows they're incompetent. And I think the buck stops at the DGCA. And I really think that, the people who pay the price, we have a system in the country where they have no recourse, and that's why the government gets away with it.
So finally, you said that, when someone has such a monopolistic hold over the market, the consumer, the passenger also runs out of options, right? If you and I tomorrow have to get from point A to point B, and the convenient flight is Indigo, we will take the Indigo flight, notwithstanding the irritation or the anger we may feel at their arrogance or impunity today. But you also spoke simultaneously of a class action option. Are you suggesting that the sort of thousands of people, maybe more, who were hit by what happened in the collapse of Indigo today should find a way to come together and file a class action suit against Indigo?
So, the beauty of all this is that India has not allowed class action to function. And that is why we, the people, the consumers, we the passengers get treated so badly, because do not have rules that allow class action to actually happen. Now, class action requires a lot of work to put together people, to get affidavits, to get facts, which is a huge cost. So we have a legal system which makes such a big deal about, it goes tariq pe tariq, right? You can't have class action with that kind of justice system. You have to have contingency fees, because a law firm has to do a lot of hard work and probably take a percentage. If Indigo were worried that, there could be a class action where they would end up paying a huge amount of money, they would not have dared to work with the DGCA and the government and been so confident, because they would know that they would face the music from the public. What is 10,000 bucks? I mean, if you're a singer and you can't come to Bombay and perform, it's lakhs and lakhs of rupees. I mean, you couldn't attend your own wedding. I mean, think about the cost. It's a lifetime thing. 10,000 rupees is what you will pay somebody who couldn't attend their own wedding. I think it's ridiculous. And all this would have been compensated by a class action giving punitive damages, right? We have not allowed it to happen for anything, whether it's a bank failure or it's an airline failure. And I think we as people should demand that the government allows this to happen by framing the rules and notifying them. They've allowed it in the Companies Act, I think in 2013. But in practice, class action is literally not possible in India. And that's why none of the passengers are going to get compensated, even if they create a class. What they will do is they'll have 100, 200, 300 people go to court. And I have, been part of helping people doing this when there have been broker collapses. Nothing happens for the next 10 years. It will go tariq pe tariq and you will have no result. And by then, the crisis is forgotten. The judges have changed. They themselves will not know the severity of the tragedy. We need to have effective class action in India.
Well, that possibly explains the impunity that has been on display in IndiGo's response, despite this staggering sort of collapse. Let me ask you a final question. The board of IndiGo is actually made up of some pretty eminent people, former air chief, Amitabh Kant, Vikram Mehta, Pallavi Shroff, really people who have been accomplished achievers in their own spaces. Do you not find it kind of odd that they have been, or Vikram Mehta in this case, has been sent out to be the face of the response? There is some CEO whose names most Indians will not know because he's a foreigner. The promoter, as you mentioned, seems to be protected by somebody or has decided that he will not be the face of this crisis. What would you expect this very impeccable board at this moment to ask of the company's promoter?
So it's quite simple. First of all, the board was silent until some of us started tweeting about it. Then the next day, they issued a press release saying, oh, who says that the board wasn't meeting? We were all talking. But, these meetings, this is a listed company. There is a structure for corporate governance. There is a structure for disclosures, which means, and Vikram Mehta referred to an emergency board meeting. I've gone through the stock exchange filings from 3rd December. There is no mention of an emergency board meeting. And Barkha, there's a huge difference between all of us being on a Zoom call or talking to each other and worrying about something and saying, ye karo and wo karo, and having a formal, recorded, minuted board meeting, which is reported to shareholders, investors, and the regulator. And I've even messaged someone in the regulator saying that, how is this informal confabulation? And don't forget, M. Damodaran, a former SEBI chief, is on the IndiGo board, and he runs something called governance excellence or whatever. So they know what the rules are. Yeah. This emergency board meeting, until I wrote my column yesterday, was not reported to the exchanges, which means that for the first 4 days, there was no formal documented emergency board meeting that was talked about. So there is a structure and a process. And, I agree that the board's first responsibility should be to, handle the crisis and to get the planes in the air again and to resolve passenger issues. But if you ask me, I think it's not good enough. There are some board members who have privately told me, wait and watch. We will ensure there's action. We are not running away. So we are waiting and watching. But I'm very disappointed by hearing Mr. Vikram Mehta today, because that doesn't sound like, they're going to act. That sounds like a cover-up.
And frankly, I think there's no excuse for the promoter to not come out and speak or be visible, or at least issue a written statement in his own name, Sucheta. It's a
signal. That also is a signal, right?
And what is it signaling to you?
The signal is that I am so powerful that the government is not calling me, and the government doesn't dare to call me, right?
Many questions mounting. If board members have told you privately, watch this space, we will, but we'll watch it carefully. But I do share some of your cynicism that, unless there is a legal option available to people in the form of a class action suit, or unless the monopolistic hold of IndiGo over the market is broken, this story will fade from the headlines. And that is something now that's up to the people of this country to not allow to happen. Sucheta Dalal, always a pleasure to learn from you, to speak to you. Thank you so much. Take care and talk again soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Barkha. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.